So if, like many of us, you're struggling to keep your weekly food shopping bill down at the moment whilst also trying to feed your family on a budget, then this video will hopefully help. I've put together 4 recipes that will make 4 generous adult sized portions, so if there's less than 4 of you then you'll definitely have leftovers. And I've also broken down the costs so that you can get an idea of how much each meal will cost you to make. It's up to you with some of the recipes if you wanted to add a portion of rice or noodles or perhaps a side salad, but the basic cost has all been worked out for you, and these things won't add on a great deal of money. I've tried to be as clear and step by step as I can, but if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask, and I hope you enjoy this video. So I'm going to be making a honey mustard chicken tray bake. This is really simple and another really affordable recipe. So I'm using skin on bone in chicken thighs. This recipe is for 4 people, so I would use a kilo. Ideally I'd try and use 2 chicken thighs per person, although some of these are huge, so I think there's only 7 in this pack. So you will need 1 kilo of potatoes. We're going to scrub these up and leave the skins on, just saves a little bit of time and adds nutrients as well. I've got 750 grams of carrots that I'm just going to peel and chop. We're going to need salt and pepper, obviously, for seasoning. Then we've got some Dijon mustard and some whole grain mustard. We're only going to use about 4 tablespoons of each of these. So if you've bought new jars, you've definitely got enough for another recipe. Some runny honey. As you'll know by now, I use lime juice in pretty much everything. If you haven't got lime juice, then white wine vinegar, rice vinegar, even just white vinegar would be fine in this. We're going to use a few garlic granules, and we're also going to use either some fresh chopped garlic or some fresh chopped frozen garlic because I'm lazy and it's much quicker and more convenient. So the first thing we're going to do is preheat our oven to 200 degrees, and then I'm going to get out a frying pan and brown off this chicken. It's a really important step because it really definitely adds to the flavour and gets your chicken nice and crispy. So let's get started. So I'm just going to season my chicken thighs with some salt, some pepper and some garlic granules. I would say about a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper and a couple of teaspoons of garlic granules. And we're going to give that a good mix. So once your pan is nice and hot, we're just going to pop the chicken in skin side down. So you just want to flip your chicken around every now and again for about 5 to 7 minutes on a really high heat, just until you've got some really nice colouring on the skin. So for our sauce, we're going to go in with 150 ml of runny honey, 4 tablespoons or 60 ml of mustard, so I'm going to start off with the whole grain, 4 tablespoons or 60 ml of Dijon. So you want around 4 cloves of freshly chopped garlic. If you're using frozen, I would go in with about 4 spoons. I'm going to use 4 tablespoons of lime juice. Like I said, you could replace this with vinegar, any kind of white vinegar. Or if you wanted to, you could add water if you haven't got any of those, just to make it a little bit more liquid. And we're just going to give that a good mix together. This makes a wonderful salad dressing as well. I'm going to add the tiniest bit of salt and pepper. So I've just scrubbed and cubed my potatoes. I'm just going to add those straight into an oven dish. And then I've peeled and cubed up my carrots as well. And on top of that, I'm just going to nestle my nicely browned chicken. And what I'm going to do is make sure you pour every single bit of the juice from the chicken back into your pan, because that's where all your flavour is off of your chicken. I'm just going to go in with our dressing, kind of drizzle it all over the top. Make sure you coat the chicken and all the potatoes and carrots. This smells so nice. I wish you could smell this. I'm really craving this as a salad now as well. So simple, literally has taken me about 5-10 minutes to prepare. Does anyone else find chopping veg really therapeutic? So I'm going to make sure that all the chicken's nicely coated, and then I'm going to pop this into my oven that's preheated at 200 degrees. I'm going to give it about 45 minutes and check it after about 30. And give it a little shuffle around if needed, and if you find that your chicken or any of it's going a little bit too brown, you can either pop a lid on if you're using like a casserole dish, or cover it in some foil, but in my opinion the crispier the better. So this is going to go in and I will show you it when it comes back out. are out of the oven. I gave mine an extra 15 minutes just to get that really nice colouring on all the vegetables. I've just had a little taste and it is so good. It's absolutely piping hot. I'd recommend leaving it to sit for 5 minutes or so before you serve it up. I'm going to pop some in a bowl just to show you how I would serve it. You could add other veg with this if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as it is. You could definitely do with a nice bit of crusty bread now to dip in and soak up all those juices. Make sure you spoon all the lovely juices over the top. So that's it, an easy, delicious and affordable honey mustard chicken tray bake. So this recipe is not only really filling, it's probably one of the cheapest ones that I make, and the way that I remember the ingredients is because it's basically 4 of everything. In here I've weighed out 400 grams of dry rice. This is just a long grain quick cook rice. You could use basmati, whatever you've got in. So I've cooked mine in the pressure cooker, but you can just cook it on the hob according to the packet instructions and let it cool completely. We've got 4 tins of tuna in brine, 400 grams of mixed vegetables. These are the frozen ones, and this whole portion is about 40p. You can get a big bag for 99p. We're going to use 4 eggs, 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, and then a little bit of cayenne and garlic, salt and pepper, and then if you've got any of these things hanging around in your cupboards or your fridge, you can garnish it with spring onions, sesame seeds, a big squeeze of lime juice, chili flakes, anything like that to go on top, but it works perfectly as it is. So while our rice is cooling down, the first thing we're going to do is scramble up our eggs, and I'm going to add my garlic and a tiny bit of cayenne pepper into those. If you're not a fan of spice, then leave the cayenne pepper out. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and a little salt and pepper. We're just going to scramble the eggs until they're just slightly underdone. I'm going to remove those from the pan. So to the same pan I've just added a little bit more oil, and now we're going to saute our vegetables for a few minutes. Seasoning. I've added in my drained tuna. I'm going to add back in my scrambled egg. After you've added your soy sauce, we're just going to give that another few minutes, stirring occasionally, and that's it done. This is so tasty, full of protein and really, really filling. So I've given it a massive squeeze of lime juice. I've chopped up a spring onion and added some sesame seeds. You could put chili flakes on here, toasted sesame seeds, crispy onions. This is an absolutely huge bowl and a massive portion, and I will show you just how much is left. As you can see, we've barely made a dent in it. Definitely more than 4 portions, less than £5. It's also perfect cold if you wanted to take it to work or for a packed lunch or maybe a summer picnic. It tastes amazing, it's so quick to make, and it's really, really filling. So if you're craving a takeaway but you are not craving the cost, then this is a recipe you really, really have to try. Depending on what chicken you use, the price can vary, but not by very much. So I'm actually going to let you in on a secret, although it isn't a secret if you watch my videos regularly. This frozen chicken breast from Sainsbury's, the Class A one, is the only frozen chicken breast I've found that has no added water, no added salt, and you have to defrost it before you can cook it. If you check on most frozen chicken portions, you'll find that you have to cook them from frozen. This one is literally just chicken that is frozen, and it's only £4.25 a kilo. Fresh chicken breast is £6 a kilo. So if you can get this one, I would use it. Any chicken breast is fine. As this recipe serves 4 people, I'm going to use 4 chicken breasts, but it's completely up to you. If you want to use a little more or less, you can adjust this. This is not an exact recipe, you don't have to worry too much. We're going to be making the simplest sticky sauce using ketchup, sweet chili sauce and honey, and then a really simple dredge for the chicken using egg, corn flour and these couple of seasonings. But the first thing I'm going to do is get 4 chicken breast portions out of here and chop them into small pieces. Right, so we need to make a mixture to dredge our chicken in. So I'm going to use 2 eggs because I'm using 4 chicken breasts. If you wanted to half this recipe, just half all the ingredients obviously. So I'm going to pop 2 eggs in here. This is like a little eggy chicken marinade. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then 2 teaspoons of garlic granules. And then a little bit of black pepper. And then I'm just going to get my diced chicken and put it straight into the mixture. I'm going to give that a really good mix around, and then we're going to set this to one side for about 15 minutes. Let it soak in a little bit. You can leave it on the side, it doesn't have to go back in the fridge as long as you don't leave it any longer than that. What I love about this recipe, it's another one that's really simple to remember. I'm just going to use 4 of each because I like a lot of sauce and I want to make sure I've got enough rather than too little. So we're going to go in with 4 tablespoons of squeezy honey. Don't have to be squeezy, it's just easier. As long as it's a runny one. If you haven't got a runny honey, you've got a set honey, you can always run it under some warm water and it will go runny. So 4 decent tablespoons of this. This may seem weird, but trust me on this one, you want 4 tablespoons of tomato ketchup. I'm going to go in 4 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce. This is just, whoa, this one has got a mind of its own. This is a cheaper version from Home Bargains. The cheaper ones tend to be, oh my goodness, the cheaper ones tend to be a little bit more garlicky, but I don't mind that too much. This is one that I would possibly use in a recipe, but I don't think I would want to use it on its own. Yeah, it's just it's going wherever it feels like going. It's getting blocked up with the chili flakes. And then 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. I find Lidl or Aldi the cheapest place to find soy sauce in the UK. I think this is about 65p for a bottle. Just going to whisk that together. Your sauce wants to be looking something like this. So this step is pretty messy but necessary. We're going to get a load of corn flour in a bowl. And then we're just going to dredge our chicken in it. So we're just going to put a few pieces at a time. I'll show you one to start with. Literally coat the chicken and pop it to one side. Corn flour is so fine, it gets absolutely everywhere, but this is well worth doing. It makes it really crispy. I'm going to put a few pieces at a time because I'm impatient, and then I always wish I hadn't. So once your chicken looks like this, we need to get it nice and crispy. So I'm going to cook mine in the air fryer. We are going to probably have to do 2 batches, but it's well worth spreading them out and not overloading it, so you get that nice hot air and it goes all really, really crispy. You can also shallow fry these, so put an inch or so of oil in a pan, get it nice and hot, and then pop these in a frying pan. I tend to use vegetable oil spray. I don't tend to cook with big amounts of oil. It's just something I've always done, just a habit I've always had. Don't tend to fry stuff like that very often at all, especially seeing as I've got an air fryer. So I have lined my air fryer with some greaseproof paper. it basically is just going to make clean up that much easier and stop everything sticking. So I'm going to pop the chicken in, and then I'm going to give it a good spray with this, and then I'm going to put it on 200 degrees for 15 minutes. And like I said, I think with this salt we're definitely going to need to do 2 batches. You could also do this in the oven. I'd probably do it a little bit higher, maybe 220 degrees for around 15 to 20 minutes. If you haven't got an air fryer and you don't want to shallow fry them, that is another option. Here's our 2 batches of chicken out of the air fryer, 15 minutes on 200. It's gone really nice and crispy, and the flavour of this chicken is something else. You wouldn't think that marinating it in a bit of egg and soy sauce and garlic would make such a difference, but it's really nice. So what we're going to do now is get our sauce heating up. So you've got 2 choices here. If you are a garlic fan, then I would put a little bit of butter in this pan and pop in a few cloves of garlic just chopped up. My sweet chilli sauce is really garlicky anyway, so I'm not going to add any more because we've also got garlic granules in the chicken marinade. So I'm just going to heat up my pan and add my sauce in. We're going to let it bubble a little bit, reduce it down, and then just toss through our chicken. I'm going to heat that slowly, and once it starts to bubble a little bit, it's going to start to thicken. So we're going to let that bubble for about 2 or 3 minutes, and the way that you can tell when it's practically ready is drag your spoon through it, and you'll see it creates a well in the middle and just slowly closes up. If that immediately follows the spoon and closes the gap, it's not thick enough. If you can pull your spoon through and it slowly meets in the middle, then we're thick enough to add in our crispy chicken. We'll turn that right down. Now we're just going to gently toss our chicken in that lovely sweet sauce. Leave that on there for a few minutes until the chicken starts to caramelize a tiny bit. We don't want to burn it, but it's getting more and more sticky, and then we are ready to serve. So I've just topped mine with some sesame seeds and some chives from the garden, and that's it, crispy honey chili chicken. That will taste 10 times better than a takeaway. So in my opinion, quiche is a really underrated budget food, purely because a few ingredients go a really long way, and you can also have it hot as a main meal with like roasted veg, or cold with a salad, take it on picnics, leftovers for lunch, and it's actually really filling as well. So we're going to make a red onion and bacon quiche, very simple, very minimal ingredients. So we're going to start off with 115 grams of plain flour and 115 grams of wholemeal flour. You also need 115 grams of butter. So that's for our base, that's all we need, really simple, 115 of each. I'm making this in a 9-inch quiche dish. I haven't got a springform pan, I've only got like a ceramic dish, so that's what I'm going to be using. I've got 1 small chopped red onion and around 6 rashers of crispy bacon. I just bought a value one in Lidl. Make sure it's smoked if possible, it just adds a little bit more flavour. And I just did this in the air fryer on 180 for 10 minutes and chopped it up with scissors. I've got 3 eggs, they're very small, so you could get away with 2 large eggs if you've got bigger eggs than me. We need 3/4 of a pint or 425 ml of milk. This is just whole milk because that's what I picked up in the shop. You could use any milk you want for this. And then we need some cheese. Now you're supposed to use 300 grams, so I've cut this to 250 grams because 300 grams just looked absolutely monstrous. Still looks like a lot of cheese, but I think if you're going to have a cheese quiche, you really need to taste the cheese. And also some mixed herbs, or my favourite is sage. I absolutely love sage. You could replace this with any dried herb you want, or like I said, just a completely mixed one. This is just a sprinkle all over the top. And then we're also going to want a tiny bit of salt and pepper. So I'm going to be using my stand mixer with the paddle attachment, which is this one, to make the dough. If not, you could do this by hand. So I'm going to pop in my plain white flour. I've got our wholemeal flour, and then 115 grams of softened salted butter. So I'm just going to mix this until it resembles fine breadcrumbs. Once your mixture resembles breadcrumbs, we're going to want to turn the mixer on really low and slowly add the tiniest bit of water until our breadcrumbs turn into a dough. So now we've got a dough, we are ready to roll it out. So I've lined my quiche dish with some baking paper. I've just put some butter underneath to help it to stick, and I've also greased it. I've left the sides quite long because this is going to be quite full up and it might come up over the sides. So a tip for greasing your greaseproof paper or your baking paper is to pop your butter in, then use a little bit of scrunched up baking paper just to rub all around and get your butter in all the little crevices. Using this and also sticking your paper down with butter really helps. So I've floured my worktop, and what we're going to do now is roll our dough out. So I'm going to be 100% real with you, as I always am on this channel. Any mistakes I make, unless they're horrifically bad and you never actually see them, I always tell you what's gone wrong, because if you can't laugh about it, then life is way too serious. So for some reason, my quiche dough just fell apart, my pastry. This is being held together with love. I've done what you really shouldn't do, and I've kind of tried to mend it, which means I've way overworked the pastry and I've probably pushed it way too far down into the dish. So we will see what happens. Hopefully it will turn out okay anyway. The only thing I can blame it on is the fact that it's actually really warm today. My kitchen is really humid, and pastry is much better if you can work with cold hands, cold kitchen, really cold dry environment. So perfect in the winter, but in the British summertime, when we do get sun, it gets really muggy really quick. So I'm just going to see what happens. Hopefully it's going to be okay. I've trimmed the edges, I've patched it as best I can, but I'm aware that you are not supposed to be touching it, and you're certainly not supposed to be trying to glue it back together. See what happens. Hopefully the egg and the milk will bind it. I feel like I could maybe have popped this in the fridge now for a little while, but I think it's probably best that I just get on with this and get it in the oven. So the first thing we're going to do is put the cheese all over the base. I really hope this does work, because this is a hell of a lot of cheese. I think this is way too much cheese. Like, this is an excessive amount of cheese. Next up, we're going to sprinkle over our cooked bacon. You could toss the bacon and the onion in flour if you wanted to. It would help stop the filling sinking, but if you do it in this order, it shouldn't sink to the bottom, because the cheese is going to create like a layer. If this doesn't work, I'm going to take the filling and I'm going to use it as like a jacket potato filling or in a wrap or something, so there's no way I'm wasting all this. I'm going to take our red onion, sprinkle that as much as you like. I don't know if I'm going to use the whole one because it's a lot. I don't know. That should caramelise. I've preheated my oven to 190 degrees. I'm going to put all the onion, why not? It smells so nice. Cheese and red onion and bacon. Perfect. Next up, I'm going to sprinkle over a load of my sage. Like I said, you could use whatever you want here, mixed herbs if you would rather. I love sage. Last but not least, I have whisked together my 3 eggs and my milk, and I've also added some salt and pepper into that mixture, and we're just going to pour this slowly over the top. I'm hoping this sort of glues my pastry and it doesn't just all fall out the bottom where there's cracks. Keeping it real, we can't all be on the Great British Bake Off. I'm a cook, I'm not a baker, I've always said that. I can cook, like I don't have any confidence issues with cooking. Baking, oh, it's disappearing. I'm hoping it's not all running out the bottom. Oh no, yeah, still going. There we have it. I'm going to pop this into my preheated oven, 190 degrees for around 35 minutes, and let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. So here we are out of the oven, and to be honest, it looks absolutely delicious. I'm really hoping this has worked. I left it for 35 minutes at 190, and then I gave it another 10 because what I really wanted, I think, was where you see where this side is like nice and caramelized. I kind of wanted that all the way across, so what I did was actually just popped it under the grill for a few minutes just to caramelize the rest of the onions. So now it's got that nice colour all over. I was quite cautious, I didn't want to burn it, but yeah, I think it's looking so good. I'm just really praying it stays together. Fingers crossed it's going to be fine, but I'm not going to do what I always do, get impatient and take it out of its case now. I'm going to let this cool absolutely, completely stone cold before I attempt to cut it, because I think that's our best chance of survival. Okay, so here we go for the moment of truth. I have let this well and truly cool. It's actually turned out perfectly. It's turned out way better than I could have hoped. I'm going to attempt to turn it upside down to show you there is no soggy bottom. It is nice and crispy. I'll turn it on its side maybe. You can see there is no sogginess at all. It's actually turned out really well. I'm going to put it back down because it looks a bit odd. It's completely set. You can just hold it in one hand. You've got really nice layer of filling there. All the cheese hasn't been wasted. Amazing. You can see all the filling there, the cheese and the egg, the lovely crispy bacon. We've got caramelized onions, and that's not even a quarter. I've cut a huge slice. So although I said these recipes will serve 4 hungry adults, I think you're definitely going to get 5 out of this.
It's what you're doing, it's making me feel like I'm